Good evening and welcome back to my show. My name is Samikis Matthews. I am a Mocktor, not a doctor. So I am Mocktor Samikis Matthews. I have absolutely no credentials, but I've seen some things in my 53 years and I have a PhD in keeping it real. So let's get it on. Today, and I'm so frustrated right now, because I thought all this time I was talking for about 20 minutes, okay, and I realized that my recording was paused. So this is the horrible thing about not knowing how to edit, because when I need to cough or when I need to, a minute to look at my notes, I pause instead of just letting it run and then being able to edit out and cut out what you don't want. And then when you forget to turn to start it back up again, you lose 15 minutes of what you're saying. Excuse me. So today's topic is going to be when trauma in the marriage fades romantic love, and how you can still create a future even though love is showing up differently for both of you. So what I mean by when trauma in the marriage fades romantic love, obviously, that sounds pretty self-explanatory. But if you've been married, you've been through trauma. It's just as simple as that. If you've been born, you've been through trauma. It's just as simple as that. Some of us have varying levels of what this trauma is. Some of us show up in marriage more emotionally mature than others because maybe we had a great head start in life. Or if it just depends on where we came from. Some of us come from, parents that were 16 and 17 years old, and they don't know what they're doing, because who of us knows what we're doing when we're 16 and 17 years old. Some of us, are born into this family where we have, two very emotionally mature parents, and there's hardly any trauma. You may have varying levels of, but maybe you were a little too spoiled and a little too catered to. So now you're, expecting more from your partner because you had more from your parents. So there's all these reasons, and I can go on and on and on and on forever, as you can see, as to why we are going to bring in some kind of negative component from childhood into the marriage. It's just almost a given. So let's talk about some of the reasons that this might happen. This might start happening. So again, where we come from shapes it, but I also think just life. Life is very, very stressful, and I think the younger you are, the less time you take in fixing yourself, because when you're young, where you came from is normal, so you don't even realize you have to fix yourself, right? I mean, who of us at 25 knows that we need to, introspectively, make observations and, conclude, what our issues are and how to even proceed to do that. None of us are thinking about any of that kind of stuff at that age. None of us. And to make matters more complicated, a lot of times we add a child to that or children to that in our young marriage, and we're focused on the family, which is a beautiful thing. I don't want to minimize how beautiful it is to have children when you're young and you have energy and you're vibrant. I'm just saying there's so little time to be honest and truthful with each other and take the time, because everybody's just so doggone tired. We're only human. A lot of us have to work, as well as raise children, as well as work. And if you have a partner that doesn't participate in the parenting as much, or the cleaning or the cooking, one partner always seems to have, be doing more of the work than others, and that even, contributes more to, the lack of time to be able to do all of this, soul searching or whatever. So there's that. There's just day-to-day life. And in this day-to-day life, I think what happens is, we're just so exhausted. We start treating each other, bad. And again, varying levels of this depending on where you came from. But if you have two people who grew up, or even just one who grew up with some pretty bad trauma in their lives, they're bringing that in, and you're coming from two different backgrounds. Say your way was better. I know my husband, he, grew up with a stepfather who wasn't really kind to him. And the only example of a father that he had was that man. And, he walked into the house, and instead of saying hi, it's like, why isn't this done? What the, and he'd cuss at him. And it was never hello. It was never not one warm moment from that man. And when you're a father by yourself, or when you become a father, you don't know how to draw from something that wasn't poured into you. You don't know how to be, that was your example. So I know for us, it was the day-to-day, just, emotionally absent person who didn't offer anything warm, but always had demands, and, you're necessary for him to have, but there's no cherishing and no gratitude for what you are. And so that's just my own personal thing. There's lots more of my personal thing, but that's kind of the small thing that I'll share. So each of us has something different that we bring to the marriage that is not good for the other person. And then to add another layer is menopause. Now I'm going to tell you something that I heard. Menopause is the hormone that makes women nurturing. It makes women compensate when, the man isn't, being emotionally supportive. She compensates. If the man isn't showing love, and kindness to the children, she compensates. When menopause goes away, that feeling of wanting to, it's like you compensate for everything that's lacking over the years, and you don't even bat an eye about it. You just keep doing it over and over and over. If it needs to get done, the woman figures out how to get it done. In menopause, it is not that way. You wake up one day and you think to yourself, why the heck is everything falling on me? And then in addition to that, there's more irritability, there's more exhaustion. And now that the kids are gone and you are not focused anymore on raising your kids, now you can focus on what needs to be fixed. But it seems like even though this change in your marriage is happening gradually, it hits you overnight. And you know that it's been stacking on for years and years and years, because women, we keep data, we keep records, we saw these issues and these, everything that was lacking all through the years, but just because we're young and we have that wonderful hormone, we're able to just compensate. And we remember, though, all the times that we gave way more than you, and in a moment you're so angry. So menopause totally kills libido. Pardon me. And whatever is left of the libido, all those traumatic memories, kill what's left. So then you wake up one day and you feel different about this person you're married to. You feel different. And it's a shocker to them, because you just never spoke about, to the degree that you do later on, how miserable you might have been. And because you just kept it in, they're like, hey, what happened? What's changed? Nothing's changed. That's the problem. you've been this way all along. I haven't had time to evaluate what it is because I've been so involved caring for these children. And now I'm going through this thing in my life and I don't want to do this anymore because I think it takes your energy too. You don't have the energy to do it anymore, and you also don't have the desire to do it anymore. And on top of that, now you have the time to think of all the things in your marriage that need fixed. And boy, over the years has a pile developed, right? There's now this, when you don't have time to address this or you don't have time to address that, it just piles up. And even if you were able to talk about it, which I believe that this is true because I know for a certainty that you bring things up over the years and you talk about it, but because of both of your ages and both of your levels of maturity at the time, you're not really addressing it the way that you should, like two young people. I mean, in your 30s, you're still kind of selfish and you're still kind of inexperienced, and you're not able to even put a name to what it is that has happened to you. It takes years to understand that, and because even though you're not saying anything, you're thinking about it over the years. You're thinking about it, and one day, like I said, when that menopause comes on, then you start to figure out how you need to explain it to this person. And when you're not saying anything, it really does come as a shocker. I would say, it comes as a shock to a person because you've never said anything. And even though you wanted to and you tried to, but when you can really put the words to it, because what happens is feelings come before words. Like, you feel the pain before you can explain it to a person. You're telling a person I have pain, but they go, why? And you can't explain why. But they're doing something. You can't pinpoint it. But once you've lived and you finally go, that's what it is that you're doing. And you can put a name to it and you can explain it and define it. And then they can finally go, oh, I get it, And at this stage in life, they're more mature and they feel bad and they want to fix it, And, that comes with being mature too, which is something that maybe a younger guy isn't feeling. So there's all these reasons that, without getting specific, because everybody's situation is different, that you get to a point where this trauma changes the way love shows up. So I think when you get to this point in your marriage, depending on how bad things were, one person may still really be in love and so attracted and all this other stuff. And then I think for women, I don't know, it could be man or woman that feels that way. But I know your libido is not there and you don't want to have anything to do with anything like that at all, which is very, very difficult for the men. And I think the challenge is that each person has a different view of what they want their marriage to look like at this stage in life. They both have two different views and they're occupying the same space. So there's a frustration there. There's a frustration because one may want a very romantic love and one may find that very difficult to perform because they're, it's, and then there's an expectation added to that. Once you've gone through all the figuring out what the problem is, once you've talked it all over, and once you've spent years trying to repair and explain and all that stuff, you get to a point where when all that's said and done, you may both not be in the same place. You may not both feel, you may have a different version of what you want this marriage to provide to you now. And it is hard. It is hard. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, is any of this resonating with anybody here? Because I'm sure, I have talked to my girlfriends and, things like that. And menopause does change you, but also it's just the time. I don't want to blame menopause for everything, because that then seems like it's the woman's problem. But it's just being busy, and it's just all of those things. And now fast forward to everything, and now you're at this place where you're both looking at each other and you both want different things. Passion may be important to one person, it may not be important to the other. One person, you guys have existed in the same state for so long, and now somebody says, well, now I want to do something different. Now and that could be difficult. So, having said all that, is it possible for both people, the person who still feels the same, the person who now feels different, can they both still find value in the marriage? I believe that the answer is yes. The answer is yes. You can still find value in the marriage. I think that romantic love thins and becomes something gentler. And, you have to realize that love doesn't show up in just a single shape. There's many shapes of love. There's a love built on the history that you have together, the family that you created. And those are the things that you focus on once you get past that hump. Because anger really is just a door to healing. It is not a house. You don't stay there. But you stay there for quite a while, because it's like a download. Imagine like downloading years of data. You're downloading all those years of trauma, and you're downloading all the data, and you're figuring it all out, and you're analyzing it. Could take a couple of years, a few years, to get past all of that. And once you're there, you can look back on the good parts of the history, the good things that the marriage created. It created your grandchildren, your children, your family. It and even for the person that you are angry with, or that you've changed, your feelings for, or the way that you love them, they're still very much family. You care still very, 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 very much for that person. I mean, this, it's the kind of love that isn't hot and heated and keeps you up at night and nail biting and all that stuff, but it's steady, and it's steady, and it's comfortable. There's a beauty in, being able to know what kind of coffee how they want their coffee without having to ask. There's a beauty in knowing, you have a companion that you want to share your time with and spend your time with. And, that all comes after, setting your expectations, because like I said, over the years, once you talk through all that stuff, you communicate what you want from the marriage now, and you move forward, the best you can. And I guess the whole point of this video, I know I spent a lot of time on you know, the negatives and, you know, how you got to that bad place. But once that's all behind you, it's like gutting a house and rebuilding it, you know? It's saying, I don't want our future marriage to look anything like the former structure. I want it to be bigger and beautiful. I want it to be more substantial. You know, passion is one small thing in a marriage. There's so many more things. There's mutual respect, there's friendship, and there's getting close to people, you know. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think it's possible to survive, you know, all those bad things? I mean, it takes a lot of self-sacrifice, and it takes a lot of determination. You got to be determined, because I'll tell you, marriage is not for the faint of heart. You have good days, bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, good years, bad years, you know. That's real. And I truly believe that no matter what your decision is regarding staying or not, which I chose my marriage over not, you know, over divorce. But you're going to have issues no matter who you're with. Now, I know a person, I know many people that got a divorce and got married later in life to other people. And what happens is your young-minded, selfish, emotionally immature person that you were, who had this tumultuous marriage when you're young, you know, that person is now mature and grown up, and now they meet somebody who's also matured and grown up, and they both have their drama in their past lives, and they come together and it kind of seems like a new slate. And I can see how that looks really appealing to people. And but there's a lot that gets unpacked with that too, because you have your children, they have their children, you know, then you're blending families, and that takes many, many years to smooth out. And you're already this age. You know, when you're this age and you're with somebody, and if you can work on the marriage you have, you don't have to work out anything new for decades. Now we're past it. Now these next decades we can build on just ourselves and concentrate on ourselves, not concentrate on, you know, that's just my choice. I'm not saying I, you know, knock anybody who does it, but I'm just saying that's an aspect you have to think about when you're deciding, because, you know, there's a lot of unknowns, whereas when you're married to someone this many years, there's very few unknowns, you know. You can now focus on the other things. So I don't know. Anybody who is going through this, I'd love to hear from you. I'm really curious what your take is and what your experience has been on this subject, because it's deep, you know, and I know that there's so much to unpack in a topic like this. I mean, this really, marriage is a series. It's not a video. It's a series of videos. It's like with seasons, I mean, there's just so much to unpack with. We can get specific on what kind of abuse you had to endure, and that's a whole, series, and then this other thing is a whole, but to overcome all that and to still be standing there with the same person, it's like, do I want to start all over? I really don't. And I'm a person of faith, and I'm a Bible reader, and not that I'm not trying to put that on anybody, but that's just the way I feel. And I feel like if you try to do things the right way, you'll get the help and the blessing and all that kind of stuff to figure it out. But I'm glad to be, it's not all the way behind me, but I'm starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And it's been a very, very hard season of life for my husband, for sure, with the uncertainty of what I was going to even do. But I always knew in the back of my mind I would choose my marriage. I just didn't know how I was going to be able to proceed and survive and still be okay and still standing and mentally, normal somewhat. My grandmother used to do this thing. She'd go, "I'm normal." And that's how you feel sometimes. You're like, am I normal? But so we're good. I'm very glad you guys joined me for this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think. Tell me what your thoughts are on this video, and let me know what you want to talk about next time, because I'd love to hear from you. Have a great night.